So without further ado, I want to introduce Ramit. He has helped lead the Microsoft app teams there. So the first thing I wanted to get to, and you can tell us a little bit about your role at Microsoft, but I keep getting people asking me, Microsoft, they're like enterprise. Why are you speaking to Microsoft at an app event? And so tell us a little bit about what you do, but then also like how the apps inside Microsoft are kind of a startup inside this massive company.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, David. And hi, everyone. And London is awesome, by the way. So I'm a growth lead. I'm in part of product management at Microsoft 365 consumer business. So basically our Word, Excel, PowerPoint apps, and there's also the Microsoft 365 app. So my current role is very focused on leading our apps on the Mac platform. I mean, Mac App Store is a big part of it. We also have a direct channel. And then I support iOS and Android. So basically our mobile apps as well. And we sell Microsoft 365 Personal and Family, which is sort of our consumer subscriptions. And then we also sell Copilot Pro. And we have a fairly large business on App Store. So like straight up in-app purchase business on App Store. And we are very much like you guys when it comes to just growing our apps. And essentially, yes, Microsoft is an enterprise company in a lot of ways, but we are also a very big consumer company. Our app presence is actually pretty good. So
yeah, if you look at a Sensor Tower or Data AI, Microsoft apps are some of the leaders in monetization on the App Store, some of the biggest apps, some of the biggest performing apps. And before talking to you, I kind of always thought of it like a lot of the questions I got this morning about why I was talking to Microsoft. Do you think of it as like, oh, it's an afterthought? It's something Microsoft does because they have to. But the more you and I have gotten to know each other and talk through how Microsoft thinks about it, it's pretty cool how you are able to operate as a startup and how much growth and monetization you are seeing on the app stores, that it's not an afterthought. It's actually like a huge line of business.
yeah, and it's a big part of the strategy. So for our consumer business, app stores are very important. And we actually have a pretty decent amount of people and money that we spend on all the things that are somewhat covered in this conference, like ASO, MMP. We have a paid ad strategy. We have a ASO strategy. We have teams that are doing optimization on the funnel. So at all parts, activation, monetization, and acquisition and renewal optimization and so on. I like to say we have an equivalent of, say, Revenue Cat and Braze and some app companies inside. Obviously, we work with a lot of vendors as well. So yeah, we have a pretty decent strategy around that.
Awesome. So I wanted to dive into ASO because I think, again, even though it's Microsoft, I think we all have a lot to learn from the strategies that you and your teams have employed there at Microsoft. But before we go, I know you needed to make a small disclaimer.
Yes. So all opinions are my own and do not represent Microsoft's official stance. So yeah, so that is a disclaimer that I'm always supposed to make.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing. I mean, Microsoft is such a big company. There's so many things going on. It makes sense that we're going to talk about some of the things you've learned and stuff, but it's not official Microsoft strategy. But on ASO, I think a lot of people in this room, again, people I talked to this morning think, oh, well, Microsoft can just own any keyword and like, oh, it's just all brand search. Like people just go and search Word. But as you and I have discussed, that's not actually the case. So tell me a little bit about what kind of ASO work Microsoft does to find the right audiences on the app stores.
Okay. So, I mean, just like most other app companies, we have a ASO vendor and we work with them on a number of things. And so if you look at it broadly, there's the brand optimization, which we can get because our apps are named Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, etc. So like our brand is very much in the title itself most of the time. So for the keyword optimization piece, we do comparative keywords. So if you look at app stores, a lot of times we are not the number one productivity app. So there are other apps that are on Mac, on iOS, also on Android. There are a number of productivity apps that keep going up and down in the chart. So we have a competitive strategy with keywords.
The app stores are kind of a great equalizer, right?
Yeah, it is a democratic place, right? Yeah. So it's not that you are Microsoft, so you can just show up there, and it's not an exclusive to Microsoft channel, right? So like App Store really democratizes everyone, like just how Paramount Pictures and a YouTube influencer at the same stage when it comes to YouTube, like in terms of eyeballs, it's the same thing with App Store. Like a new app can pretty much get the top spot. We have a competitive strategy. So we always, for the most part, know who are the top competitors. And sometimes actually when it comes to App Store, it's not even some of the names that you would think. Like, I mean, sure, there are the big ones like Google, Canva, etc. But there are a lot of smaller competitors, smaller apps like productivity apps that are also at the top spot. So we do have a strategy to get some of that keyword. So competitive is a smaller part, but actually jobs to be done is a bigger part of the strategy. So we have like generic and non-generic keywords. So essentially, keywords like notes, resumes. We have a lot of like user research around what are our apps used for, because our apps are very general. We try to focus on jobs to be done, like resume creation is a job to be done, note taking is a job to be done, slide creation of presentation decks. Excel has budgeting as a big one, invoice creation. So those are some of the jobs to be done that we know. So we try to optimize for some of those keywords, because somebody may be looking for invoice and may end up at Excel, because not everybody is like a business owner looking for a QuickBooks type of solution. Sometimes you just need something very simple and Excel can do the job. So those are the kind of things that we keep doing. And there's no like constant set. We are always, so every month we have an update. And our paid ASA also kind of guides us. And also there's this whole thing that once you are ranked, say top 3 in a keyword, we can remove that keyword and get new keywords in. If we are seeing that we are consistently ranked for like, say, a year or so, we can then, slowly take that keyword out and put like an AI or a co-pilot, because we also have like newer features and newer things coming in, like AI is a big one. So we try to rank for that and things like that.
Yeah, I think even for smaller and mid-sized apps, ASO is super competitive, so Microsoft does have an advantage. But I mean, you heard it here. Like on the app stores, you were competing with the biggest company in the world, multi-trillion-dollar company in ASO. And so the same strategies that Ramit at Microsoft is employing is what we all, and I have apps on the App Store as well, personally, in addition to working at Revenue Cat. And so it's the same kind of strategies we should all be employing, thinking through the jobs to be done. And you were talking about App Store search ads, and I wanted to touch briefly on how you look at the profitability of specific keywords and then how that helps inform your strategy, because I think that's something, all app companies should be thinking about.
I mean, there's no one answer, because at any given point of time, we are running multiple campaigns. So like, say, if we are getting certain keyword that is really sticky, we can always bring it back. But very basic, like ASO 101, like the keyword bank is very small, like it's 100 characters. And then you have, yes, you can stuff a few things in the description, but it also has to make sense. So there is that aspect that description has to be clean. It has to reflect Microsoft. We are not a junk app that we will write anything in the App Store, right? So we have to make sure that everything that is external facing is like making a lot of sense. And it's not just keyword optimization. It's not just a bunch of keywords stuck together. So there has to be some flow and logic to it. But yeah, if we do find from ASA, we find some things that are high performing, we can obviously bring it back to our general ASO, like organic, or we can just bid more there. And there's also the whole MMP angle there with ASO, like trying to really make sense that if this is the keyword that is only driving monthly active usage, or is it driving real subscription? Because we have very strict CPI limits, like cost per install limits, that we want to kind of go after.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake a lot of folks make in their ASO strategy, is going after keywords that are easy to rank for. And so like at Microsoft, because the apps get downloaded so much, you could probably rank for something like swimming, but it's like, that's fine, but that's not going to drive business value. Right. And so your ASO strategy shouldn't just be about ranking, but it should be about using App Store search ads and other tools to understand the profitability of the specific keywords and being way more focused on your approach instead of just so scattershot. Yeah. Do you see any differences between iOS and Android on that front? Are there any differences there?
Yeah, there's the 80-20 rule sort of a thing. Like Android has a very large install base, but we constantly have seen, and so Microsoft apps are available, I believe, in 6+ app stores. So in China, we have a number of app stores that the apps are available in. There are also pre-installed deals, but still Android monetizes way less than iOS does. So there's a 80-20 sort of a thing. I mean, it's not exactly 80-20, it's somewhere like that Android in-app purchase revenue still lags pretty significantly to iOS. And it becomes especially interesting from like a LTV to MAU perspective that for an Android user, for example, if you have to run a paid ads, our CPI limits are like 50 times less in some cases than iOS CPI limits, right? Because basically it's like, you can drive installs to Android and you can keep getting like more and more monthly active usage, but the percentage that converts to paying users is like super low. So you have to be so careful with Android, both with cost per install, like what you pay from a paid ad, but also sometimes in terms of your organic strategies. So for example, if you have like an engagement platform that you are paying by, I don't know, data points, right? By data points or by usage or by MAU, you have to be really careful because your Android campaigns might start costing you more in terms of COGS because the LTV, because essentially if we are selling a consumer product, our LTVs are not like in thousands of dollars, they're in hundreds of dollars. So we are just operating like any other consumer SaaS startup in that sense that we are making sure that our LTV to CAC ratios are kind of in range so that we don't overspend on in-app engagement or on ads. It's not that we are Microsoft, so we'll just like go and drain money, right? Like, so all the same restrictions apply and it ultimately comes to the LTV CAC ratio.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I get asked this all the time, oh, we've got millions of active users on Android, but it's just not monetizing. How do we improve monetization? Like, I can now tell them, I talked to Ramit from Microsoft and it's the same thing. It's just like Android does not monetize as well as iOS. And like understanding that reality can help you inform the Android strategy. But then also Android, I think we're going to see a lot of evolution. I'm actually going to be talking to the Google Play partnerships team on a forthcoming episode where we talk about some of the experiments that people are starting to find success with on Android. But it's good to hear from like a prioritization standpoint that, yeah, you can put a ton of work into it and Microsoft has all the resources, but it's just a different platform and it just monetizes differently. And understanding that helps inform strategy of how you invest, how many data points you collect, how you spend on tooling for Android versus iOS. So it's super helpful to know. Another thing I wanted to dive into was monetization and A/B testing. And if there's any particular tests or anything that you think are especially interesting on subscription monetization.
Yeah. So before I get into that, I'll finish the Android versus iOS. Like I'll just conclude it by saying that I think Android is a very promising platform. It's just that maybe developers need to think more than just straight up expensive subscriptions. Because a lot of the subscriptions are very North America based. I think some of the price points may need to go down. Some new business models may need to be there. Like there has to be much more thought that has to go in to monetize that platform. It's a harder platform to crack.
You can't just copy and paste your iOS strategy.
Yes, exactly. It's just a harder platform to crack and there has to be more Android specific strategies that need to get applied. I'm not saying it's not a promising platform. We think it's a promising platform, but there's just more to be done there. So now moving on to A/B testing. So yes, a lot of our teams do A/B testing on mobile, Microsoft 365 apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, as well as the 365 app and other apps that we have in the family. We keep doing a number of experiments and some of the things that have really worked, just like very plain bare bones ideas that have worked. I think CTAs, like if you have a free trial, make sure the CTA says it's a free trial, like try free for 1 month, something like that. Because there's one thing that we have observed is that CTA has to really communicate the free value if it's available so that it's just more comfortable to press that button. So basically, like you have a free trial wording up on the top, but then you have, say, something that says buy now, for example. People are just not comfortable because a lot of times, because of how there is like a lot of this one-click buy type of things that have happened in the recent past, like people are very apprehensive of pressing the buttons, right? Because they're like, oh, I'll just touch this and money will be charged. So if you have a free trial, if you have a more comforting motion, like definitely make sure to have that on the CTA. Then another thing we have found a lot of success with is cards and GIFs. So instead of like lines of text, using some kind of cards with GIFs.
And what would be in the GIF? Yeah, I pronounce it GIFs, but
GIFs, yeah, GIFs,
GIFs,
yeah.
potato. What's in the GIFs? Like an animation and like demonstrating the value, almost like a little video kind of thing?
Sometimes that, or sometimes just illustrations. So for a Microsoft 365 subscription, some of the more important things, if you open any of our apps, some of our more important things are like, there is the premium apps that you get on desktop, and then there's the 1 TB, OneDrive storage that you get, and then there is access to AI features that you get. So those things, like you can write them down, or you can actually have like illustrations showing that you are getting 1 TB OneDrive for each of your family members. So you'll have like 6 people showing, and you see that 1 TB OneDrive is going to all 6 of them. So if you can show them more visually, it helps in converting better. So that's more of a sort of a paywall optimization type of a thing. But
yeah, no, that's a great tip. And I mean, I've been hearing that more. I've been experimenting with a video on my paywall in my weather app and have seen really good results from exactly what you're saying. It's like, people just don't read. So you can put all the great like copywriting you want, but it's like, you got to show them. And in the age of TikTok and Reels and everything else, like what better way to show them than with animated video, illustrations or other ways to like really capture their attention and then communicate that value in a way that they probably won't read, even if you write it very cleverly. So yeah, that's a great tip. Another thing you had mentioned was experimenting with just the ordering of subscriptions.
Yeah. So this was a very interesting experiment where we had our family and personal. So family is slightly more expensive. It's like $9.99, and personal is a $6.99 subscription in the US, and other region prices are different. But so we just reordered them. So we made family as a default subscription. So personal used to be the default, and then we reordered it. And then we did one more change. So actually 2 separate A/B tests. So one more change where we started showing monthly equivalent price. So like if it's $99 for the year, then we just show something like $8 or something like a monthly equivalent price. So both of those were very successful. So monthly equivalent price, when people can see, oh, it's just going to cost me $8, even if they have to be billed for the whole year, it's good. Like we saw success there. And the second one was, this reordering, where it was very interesting that when we reordered, both started selling more. And the one that went below, the personal one, it actually started selling a lot more. So I think from a psychological perspective, when we were backtracking, maybe there was this whole idea that people saw this default subscription, which was more expensive, and they're like, no, this is more expensive, but let me get this other one, which is cheaper. But it kind of increased their purchase intent somehow. Now the question in that increase, sometimes this is very psychological. Like sometimes when you see an expensive thing, like you walk into, say, like a Louis Vuitton store, you see a lot of these expensive things, and then you end up buying a tie from there because, it's the cheaper thing, but you still bought something from Louis Vuitton, right? So it's kind of like that, where you see this more expensive option up on the top, and then you end up buying the cheaper one because you still bought something and you still unlocked and you still have a premium experience. So something like that.
I didn't plan this, but we ended up talking about pretty much the top 4 things that I recommend people experiment with under paywalls. Because you can test like colors and change the color of the CTA button and all that kind of stuff. But like the highest impact are price testing, and included in that, the pricing and packaging. Like I did a test in my weather app of defaulting to only showing the $4 a month subscription versus showing the $40 a year subscription. And I had a 20% increase in conversion to paying by them just seeing that $4. And so by experimenting with the packaging, I saw a 20% lift in conversion to paying. And then the other things we talked about, experimenting with video and stuff. So these are some of the lowest hanging fruit, not just for any app here in the audience, anybody listening on the Subclub podcast, but it applies to Microsoft as well, like the biggest companies in the world. Like this is where the leverage points are on your paywall. So that's where you should be experimenting. So we are at time, but I did want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything you wanted to share as we wrap up?
Maybe go and download the Microsoft 365 apps and give us great reviews. And actually, if you like them, of course.
Yeah, no, and I think everyone here should go download the apps. Before talking to Ramit, I thought, Microsoft, they're just, boring enterprise company. But the more I've talked to Ramit, the more I've realized like they're doing really innovative stuff and like working hard at optimization and working on onboarding and paywall testing and packaging testing. And so, when you're doing research on like best practices in the industry, the apps Ramit works on are actually fantastic examples of the type of growth experiments and the type of onboarding and the type of things that you want to do in your own app.
Yeah, and let us know what you think. And I'm available on LinkedIn, so yeah, happy to help out anybody.
Awesome. And then as we wrap up, most of you probably know I'm with Revenue Cat. I'm the growth advocate. We're a subscription management and optimization platform, help simplify billing across iOS, Android, and the web, and normalize all the crazy intricacies between iOS and Android so you can run your CRM campaigns based on the same token instead of having to do different ones for the different platforms and really help subscription apps. I mean, our mission as a company is to help developers make more money. And so we build the tools to do that. I do bi-weekly interviews with top industry folks to help subscription apps grow. So check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to your podcasts. Thanks again so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge. And we'll have to do some more collaboration in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, David, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks so much for listening. If you have a minute, please leave a review in your favorite podcast player. You can also stop by chat.subclub.com to join our private community.